Hello and welcome to Design Driven. This series is the latest collaboration from Homepage News, Springboard Futures, and the Inspired Home Show. I'm Tom Mirabile, principal and founder of Springboard Futures and the consumer trend forecaster for the International Housewares Association. The mission of Design Driven is to bring to the home and housewares industries relevant updates and actually actionable inspiration on the evolving role of design in home and housewares. And we bring industry-changing experts on design and style to discuss what's now, what's new, what's next in color, materials, function from home and housewares and all across the home. In this episode, I'm really excited to be speaking with Evan Dash, CEO of Storebound and founder of the Dash brand. Evan, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So we're really happy to have you. So I want to take us back just a few minutes and ask you, what's the genesis of Dash? And for those of you who aren't familiar, we're going to be throwing in some pictures here as we go through, but what was the genesis story behind Dash?
Well, my wife, Rachel, and I decided that we wanted to leave retail. She worked at Bed Bath. I worked at Macy's. We wanted to start a company for ourselves. Our goal was to own our own calendar and work with people that we liked. And we got started, but Dash was never supposed to be Dash. We started out and we were originally exploring fashion, and her background's in fashion, and we were working with a women's shoe and handbag designer and starting to go down that road. And he disappeared for a while, and about 3 months later finally surfaced, and he'd been working on one pair of boots for Rihanna for the Grammys. And we said, we just can't do this. Like, it's really cool, but we can't do that. And we had a list of businesses that we knew, and we both knew the houseware space and particularly the electric space. And we said, it's just so ripe for some innovation. And we decided to hop in. But initially, we didn't plan to use our last name as the brand. We were talked into it by our designers. We didn't really want it associated with us or to come across as being egotistical or feeling like we were celebrity chefs, but it just, it worked so well. And we did a marketing.
It's a word that is very evocative. And I think when it's your name, you forget the evocation of that kind of word and what it means. Well, I'm curious. Look, for both of you, her in fashion and you in housewares, could you have picked a possibly more saturated market? I mean, it's the margin in small electrics is challenging. It was an industry of another hand mixer. So what, like, it just seems straight. What made you choose that, or was it just that your knowledge base made it the most obvious choice?
I think part of my DNA is I'm somebody who I've never taken the easy route. I failed out of college twice, went back to it, kept beating my head against the wall until I finally strung enough credits together. And when we looked at this, we looked at this market and we said, there's nothing easy about it, but we really felt like we could bring design and innovation to it. And we felt like there was a space for something new, and the timing was just perfect for it.
I have to take a break for a second and tell you about the show, because I'm not sure what your experience of the Chicago show was, but for me, it was, it got to the point where so many people were talking about your booth that I was like, all right, shut up, I'll go over, so I went over, and it was certainly not a disappointing experience. The booth was, I was talking to somebody recently about, why shows in general are difficult, and we were sort of looking back and forth and saying, well, what shows always get attention? And the answer that we came up with was CES, because CES waits to break a lot of product at the show. And I think in housewares, something that seems like you've kind of gone up against is that you don't see anything that the big guys haven't already seen. You don't see any, it's like, and you had created a space inside your booth with a really, I was like, wow, a velvet rope. You had like a door, a bouncer and a velvet rope just to get into a section of your showroom where you were really showing innovation. There were plenty of signs around that said this is patent pending and all that. That was inspired, but there was so much talk about so much talk about your booth at the show, just how much fun it was, and you've got to go see it. And it was just, were you aware of that?
You know what? I wasn't really aware of that. And that's so great to hear. One of the hardest things about my job is going from retail to wholesale. As a retailer, I feel like I was a free range chicken. Like, I was allowed to walk wherever I wanted. And now as a wholesaler, I'm caged up in this one booth, so I don't get to see a lot of the show. We heard a lot of compliments and a lot of positivity, but it's hard to know where we stack up compared to the rest of the industry.
It was a great position. It was wonderful to hear people talking about a show like that. People talking about Housewares. Because it's so many times you're like, oh, I got to go to a cookware demo. It's like, it's just you're trudging through some of the things, and you don't really hear a lot about experiences. And also, I have to say, and there was a social space, there was, and there was a product space, and that huge mini waffle wall. I mean, it was just a really well thought out experience.
Thank you. I mean, it's indicative of the times that we're living in, and we've always been about digital times and being digital first and trying to make cool experiences for the end consumer, for our retailers. And I mean, I think the booth is just kind of indicative of how we view the times that we're living in.
So that gives me a perfect opportunity to sort of jump ahead to present day. When we look at the brand, what's the current design identity? Is there a specific design ethos at the heart of Dash?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. You mentioned the velvet ropes before, and that's something that for us, we felt like it was really important for the Houseware show because we've become a source of inspiration for so many other companies to copy, but it flies in the face of what the brand is all about. We're all about inclusivity. We're all about affordable joy, and we're a brand that we feel like everybody can love. We started with that just designs that strike a chord with a younger consumer, but that consumer has influenced their parents and their grandparents even. So we see so much love from all different age groups and demographics, but really the core for us is we wanted to stand for something. And it was more than just the design ethos, it was also the brand messaging. And when you look at the overall economy of wellness, you have all of these brands. It's like a giant gold rush into wellness categories, from athleisure to supplements to exercise equipment, on and on. Yet for food prep, nobody was really playing in that healthy wellness space. And that was something that we believed in. We had, when we started the company, our boys were, I think, 8 and 10 years old. And at young ages, they knew more about nutrition than we knew about at older ages. And they were more interested with what are they putting into their bodies, and what effect will that have for the long term. So we trademarked unprocess your food, and that became the original mantra, and it kind of just evolved into eat good, feel good. So between this really fun, inclusive design language and content that was all around eat good, feel good, we really struck an amazing brand ethos that, as we've evolved, it's only gotten stronger. Like, we haven't had these points where we've had to pivot. It's just really worked out of the gate for us.
Well, I mean, I think that one of the reasons why the brand resonates so well is it's really very consumer centric. And I think that that's been something that at the IHA with Market Watch, we've been really trying to get people to understand that, while it may not be always tangible, if you embed consumer centrism, if you have a deep understanding of what consumers want, how they live, then you really start moving into a territory that, you have to start there. You can't start with, I'm going to create the next toaster. If you start there, you've got a really strong foundation. I think that, one of the things about Dash that I really like is that it's an interesting, I mean, aside from, and what you say about health and wellness, I was looking, and now it seems even more deliberate. I was looking at your waffle irons, for example, and even the portion size of what they produce is not this huge dinner plate size waffle. It's a portion, and it sets sort of a different standard. So I don't know whether that was intentional or not, but that's my reaction to it. But I think what's fascinating about the brand is it has an undeniable appeal across generations, and that's hard. So you hit this sort of sweet spot with the aesthetics that, like, younger millennials see it as something completely fresh. Okay. Yeah. And meanwhile, old people like us, like me, I look at it and I see, the 50s, I see, in some cases the 60s, I see something that has a familiarity to it that makes me more comfortable with the technology.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that is such an amazing observation. It does go back for us. I mean, when you talk about putting the consumer first and not just developing another toaster, I mean, that's just strikes such a chord with me, because that's what we did at the beginning. We felt like we needed to bring real value to the consumer. And at the early stages, I mean, Rachel and I basically took our life savings, risked it, opened up a business account and said, we're going to try to make a go of this. And we sat down and we had a business plan, but we also said that if we were actually lucky enough to get this thing off the ground and have products and have actual consumers take a chance on a brand that they didn't know, we had to win their hearts. So every box became this mission to win the heart of the consumer who was experiencing us in that moment. So we couldn't just look at, we had to step outside of the way that the industry typically looks at things and look at this entire consumer experience and make sure that the product looked approachable, it looked fun. We were all about, we would have like the smile scale, you know, does it make people smile? And it was so gratifying to be at some of the early trade shows and to have people see the branding and the booth design and the product and to watch their faces light up. I mean, that was the ultimate reinforcement that we have something here. And then we started creating content that was consumer-centric content, where every other brand was going out on social and saying, look at us at the Food and Wine Festival, look at this product, buy this thing. And we were saying, here's a healthy recipe, here's a healthy recipe. And it was at a time where the only way to gain followers was somebody had to click that blue follow button on Instagram and say, I want you in my feed. I want to hear what you have to say. So that was all that winning heart strategy. And part of it was a design language that was very different because we started at a time where everybody was going stainless steel. And Breville set this standard and everybody seemed to be somewhat chasing them, or they were just very plain and ordinary and price point driven. And he created this big void in the middle where we said, we can be fashion. Like, we wanted to start a fashion business. Just because we're in housewares doesn't mean that we can't bring that element to the table.
Well, it's funny though, because I mean, you made a decision that was not necessarily within your personal aesthetic. You know, I mean, look, you've done Macy's and Bloomingdale's and, you know, that whole gamut. You've looked at high-end housewares, regardless of the price point decisions you had to make for assortment at your retail in your retail life. You know, your wife has been high-end fashion, and yet you made a very accessible choice. You know, and the idea of fun. You know, I don't mean to go on, but because we haven't spoken a lot about your brand, quite frankly, we haven't spoken in years, really. But I think that one of the things, when I look at your packaging, I'm blown away. I always think, my gosh, it's so like, you got to go up and read it. And then you see that inside the box, there's recipes. And it speaks to the fact that, you know, millennials, as much as we talk about them, the average millennial has 4 recipes that they go to again and again and again. So to be able to bring them something fresh and to tell them that inside the box, you know, your online content is fabulous. But for older consumers, that they have it physically as well, it's just a really solid cross-generational offering, you know, and I look at it and I think it's possibly deliberate because it's just there's just a lot of thought goes into it, you know. So I just think it's amazing. One of the things also that I wanted to ask you was Dash consistently, Peter Giannetti and I call it re-innovating, because it's like you take a kitchenware standard, like a stand mixer. And we're going to show some pictures to the audience here as well. You take some industry standards like a stand mixer and something that we've just all started to live with the torture that a hand mixer is. That cord that's always popping out of the cabinet, not being able to get the things inside the whatever it is that's supposed to hold them, just a sense of the wrong weight or not the right strength. And it's just, we just live with it. It's like, okay, what are people saying is the best one now? You guys take item after item and really apply it just comes out differently. So is that a design team decision? Do you go in pulling apart something and the problems of it? What's the process to get there in terms of design?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've seen people's design process for so long, and it's so focused on the business. And ours just threw that on its head, and we focused on the consumer. So first thing we did was we decided we don't want industry people in this company. We wanted people from the outset who were outside the industry, who either liked or loved to cook. And we view everybody in the company as a consumer. So we built this amazing kind of somewhat eccentric, a very diverse team, and diverse from, not just the diversity and inclusion, but I mean, diverse set of experiences and work experiences and upbringings and cultures. And we involve everybody in that process. So for certain people, to be somebody on the finance team and be pulled into product development meetings, it's not the common career path. Yeah. But when we take something like the hand mixer, product that's been out there forever, we went through and we used everything out there. And we said, okay, what are the big frustrations? What could we improve on? We could improve on the fact that I could never find my beaters. Like they're in one drawer, another drawer, like who knows, we have a holder. We have beaters that won't clog up with cookie dough because they don't have a bar running down the middle. So we figured out a different way to build them. And we filed patents for that now. We looked at, okay, every time I go to use a hand mixer, I'm committing to make a mess because I like blow everything out. I don't know what it is, but it's a special talent I have. So we built in a splatter screen. So I can't do that.
That's brilliant, anymore. By the way. That splatter screen is something. The minute I saw it, I was like, oh my God.
Amazing.
It's just an amazing idea.
And somehow I'm always in some kind of black hoodie. So,
right.
I'm walking around with batter on me all the time, or flour dust. So that was another point. And then the cord storage, the ability to store it. And I don't know if you saw on the stand, we look at, okay, how are people cooking today? How are they following recipes? They're not exactly sitting there with cookbooks for the most part. Right. They're using their phone. Right. And they're going on to TikTok or website, and they're pulling their recipes. And what we did was we set up a holder for the phone, and it amplifies the sound within it. And we just thought of everything that we could possibly think of. And I'm sure we haven't thought of everything, but we could truly say today that we think we built the best possible solution for anyone who's ever used a hand mixer before. There'll be something for them to appreciate.
Well, I think when we look to process, so you say, okay, today we're working on a STEM. Do you sit with your design team? I'm also impressed by the fact that your organization is quite lean. So what part of it goes to design? Like how many designers do you have?
So we have a team of about 7 industrial designers, some engineering support, and we involve everybody in the process. The designers absolutely lead the process. They go through some ideation and then we stop. So we don't get to the point where they've already designed something that they've fallen in love with, because then you go through that heartbreaking, process of telling the designer that there's something wrong with the child that they're ready to birth.
Right. I've been there.
And it's horrible. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is. It's horrible.
From growing up on the business side of things, I worked on a report or a recap, and my boss told me it was ugly. I didn't really care. I didn't have that same kind of vested interest in a designer who's just put themselves into it. So we really involve people early on, and the designers get to hear from average consumers what their frustrations are, what they like, what they don't like, what are the use case scenarios. And it's a much more collaborative process. I'll tell you honestly, it's a distracting process also within the company, because people get pulled away from their day jobs to become part of the product development team. But we think that's a part of the reason that people stick around. We think it makes the jobs a little bit more interesting, but it certainly can be frustrating for many people in the moment.
But it may save time on the back end, because you've got people in finance sitting in there who what's going through their head as you're saying what this is. Okay, are we talking another material here? Because, are we talking a longer production time? And what so that you've kind of got at least a part of their buy-in by the time that prototype arrives.
Absolutely.
And I have to say, one of the things that I see a lot, from my past and even in my present, is when you see people who have a great idea, but the prototype's never really tested. Like there's a hand mixer out right now that has silicone on the blades, right? Mm-hmm. So that stuff doesn't stick. Okay. But to me, that should be a form issue. I have a design background, but when I bought it, because I'm an idiot. So I bought it and I pulled it out, and because nothing sticks to it, oh my God, Evan, cookie batter flinging everywhere because nothing's so the usual like sort of it was just I took pictures of it. It was a nightmare. But I think that it seems like you guys just test everything. By the time it hits the ground, the performance is just so intuitive and so awesome. So I really raise a glass to that.
Thank you. We haven't done it as well as I'd like, and things slip by that we didn't realize, but we always go back and we make improvements. We're fanatics about looking at reviews, seeing what the consumer has to say, putting things into people's hands, and always trying to improve. I mean, our egg cooker that we launched over 10 years ago, we're still making improvements to.
Yep. Well, the other thing is I think that you guys seem to design a product with literally throwing out even the old standards of something like people tend to think of small electrics as, it's not going to be countertop worthy. It's not going to be something I want to see every day. I'm going to be sticking it in a cabinet, so I don't have to think about X, Y, Z. But you guys approach products with such, I mean, if the end result needs to be fun or joy, a lot of what you do shows there are things that you just want to keep out because they're fun, And I think has that been an exception that you did intentionally, or?
I'd like to say yes, but I think it just happened. I think because we developed things that made us smile, that just kind of came along with it. So it definitely wasn't top of mind. It wasn't something that we tried to do, but we did try to win hearts and make people smile. And then the benefit of that is that they do keep things out. They do use them more. They do love the brand.
The mess factor also seems to play a part in your design. I mean, the idea of making however many hard-boiled eggs without ever having to boil water. Those products like your egg makers, the mini waffle irons that have tell me, how did that idea come about where you have exchangeable plates on waffle irons? That struck me as really interesting.
I mean, for us, it was really a sustainability choice because we have people, there's a trend. If you look on TikTok and you look at Dash Stash, you'll see people who have 20 or more Dash appliances and they keep buying them, and they have 20, they've become collectibles almost. They have 20 mini waffle makers. We don't feel that people need to own 20 full appliances. We love the idea of a nod towards sustainability in the future and being able to combine the function of, say, 7 mini waffle makers into one with interchangeable plates, and then just buy the plates that you want for various holidays or life events.
And how are retailers reacting to that?
They love it.
Yeah.
They love it. Retailers love it. The consumer loves it. And then there's also the kind of the happy byproduct of makes it a lot easier to clean. So you go back to the mess factor, and to be able to pop out the plates and throw them in the dishwasher, rather than trying to get into all of those little crevices.
Yep.
Yeah, it makes it a lot better. The other thing, just related to mess, which is interesting, is that we spend a lot of time thinking about the mess inside people's drawers and cabinets. So even though the mess is put away, we want to make things better. I mean, for me, I'm a kitchen organization freak. I mean, Container Store is my happy place. And, I love when I open a drawer and everything has its place and it's well organized. And we do a lot around that. So our bigger waffle makers have cord storage. Then it all folds together and it stands up and it goes in a nice compact footprint. So it's really easy to put things away. So we look at the mess all the way from the mess that people make in the kitchen to the mess that they make when they're storing the products. Right.
So you're really looking at the life cycle of the experience of cooking and not just what product am I trying to get out onto the plate.
Absolutely. And we're even taking it a step further. We launched new cookware. We showed new cookware at the Housewares show. That's the first, our first step into making cookware from fully post-consumer recycled aluminum. So basically like car parts and soda cans becoming cookware, and then paying attention to make it fully recyclable at the end of life. So really just trying to play into that whole circular economy and just making sure that the products stand for something better for you and better for the future.
We've spent a lot of time at Market Watch focusing on the intangibles. And it's really hard for a lot of companies to invest in that because it's scary. You're putting money into something that's like, okay, so how do you, but we try to look at it like, how do you save people time? How do you save people space? Because we've all aspired to those intangibles since we could buy anything. They may have evolved, but we always want more time. We always want more space. We always want more experience. And I think a lot of what you're talking to speaks into that, that thing that it's not even a feature. It's not the part that moves or a technology or anything like that. It's an immediate, almost a visceral reaction to what this product is and what it will be in your home. And I think that's hard to capture.
Yeah, we call that the killer app. I mean, for us, the killer app is the way that you make a consumer feel about the product and then ultimately about the brand.
Yeah, it was, I think the other part of your business that, when we talk about the houseware business as a whole, one of the saving graces of it has been the fact that a lot of people have been able to engage in giftables, but those giftables have always been sort of non-electric, great spatula business, great, some baking goods and things like that we've been able to push out into, crafting channels and things like that. But you have really done an intense job of hitting price points that are giftable, giving small objects that are just like, I can walk by a dash shelf and say, okay, $20. I mean, seriously, or $15 for an item. I'm just going to take that home. Were you trying to hit a price point? Were you trying to be giftable? What was the design directive behind that?
So we talk about value a lot, and we don't really, I shun conversations about price point because the product has to have this intrinsic price value relationship. Did I pay a fair price for the experience that I'm getting?
Right.
So we spend a lot of time looking at the value. For us, there's tremendous value in our $10 mini waffle makers, and there's tremendous value in our $200 Chef Series blender, and everything in between. So we like to think that every product represents a value. I will tell you that as a competitive advantage and kind of a barrier to entry, we knew that by focusing on small products, it's very, very hard to create margins that a company will get excited about, because you have you make a big waffle maker, a little waffle maker, you're injecting the same number of parts, you're assembling the same number of parts, there's still a lot of the same amount of labor in it. So it's very difficult to create economies of scale making small products. And we were fine with that, because we treated it almost like marketing also. We're putting these boxes into consumers' hands. It's a no-brainer to take a chance on a new brand, and they were falling in love with us. So we're able to get them in on kind of an inexpensive product, but they feel like they got an amazing value. And the surprise is people just always feel like they got more than what they paid for, more than what they expected.
So, actually, it begs the question, was there a lot of margin compromise on those smaller items? And I know we're not getting heavy duty into finance here, but that's one of the things that I think every time I say, how could they possibly hit this price point?
That was
an economy of scale, or?
Yeah, part of it is, the beauty of owning your own company, not having a private equity company or investors or a large parent company. We could make decisions that we felt like were sound investments that would pay big dividends later. And part of that was just working on shorter margins on products that we felt like would produce more than running an advertising campaign.
Right. It's interesting because one of the things that I've always stuck with is if you're there are so many brand leaders, there are so many leaders in the industry who simply don't lead. And, it's great to see a brand take a leadership position from what was at one point the back seat, and now it's the front seat. It's just been great to watch. A lot of people see retail price in any consideration of that. It's like they see price as the enemy of good design. And I think that that you've done a terrific job of hitting competitive price points. It's amazing to hear that sacrifice, because honestly, like you said, it's like, look, it was a decision to gain share and to get our product into consumers' hands who ultimately make the decision. I think that, it's one of those things that we always tend to think of the consumers as not being in control, but they are in control completely. We live.
Yeah, I mean, Rachel and I never understood why good design had to be expensive. You're molding parts, it's still raw materials. It shouldn't have to be expensive. And that was our approach early on, is that we could bring good design to, kind of all demographics, all price levels within the spectrum of electrics.
It seems like also between social media and between your site, you really navigate your reputation or your brand identity with consumers very directly. I'm not just talking about direct to consumer selling. Is that a lot of attention for you? I mean, does that sort of come easily, or do you have dedicated staff to help because one of the great things about design is it seems very consumer responsive. Okay, I am not doing this because I'm on with you. I just looked over my shoulder and saw this. Somebody just gave this to me recently. But it's so funny. It was just sitting right here. But do you have to put a lot of effort into managing the social aspect of your brand?
It is endless effort into it. And it is far and away the biggest investments we make, biggest amount of headcount is around that, because our relationship with the consumer is everything. I mean, it is our past, it's why we're here, and it is certainly the future. So we do not sleep on that for a second. And the interesting thing is we're trying to own these consumer relationships, putting everything into it, but we don't have an e-commerce business. Our e-commerce business is a negligible part of our business because we're focused on retailers. We want to bring something wonderful to retailers and empower them to sell the products, but we also know that it's our responsibility to build the demand for it. We don't go out and do it with big DRTV campaigns or infomercial. We do it through one-to-one relationships over and over and over. I mean, literally thousands or hundreds of thousands of times a week, sometimes millions of times a week, to really make those relationships sing for us.
What's interesting is it's sort of, somebody had said to me about a different company, that they kind of, this is going to sound weird, they kind of jump by our opinion, because a buyer, when you go to a buyer saying this is what consumers want and here's the proof, we developed this based on feedback that we're getting from the consumer. It's hard to have an opinion that's counter to that. Consumers say they want it. So if I'm not carrying it, well, then then why am I not carrying it? So it's great to take some of the doubt out of the equation. And I know that certain major accounts that we work with, if you can't talk about a trend without saying that there's a consumer demand behind it. Anything else seems like you're just playing crystal ball bullshit. So it's terrific to see that, to use that information. I think you're the epitome of a consumer-centric company. I really, really love what you guys are doing. And did I miss anything, Evan? Is there anything you want to say about Dash or anything in particular?
No, I mean, I first of all, I've watched you for so long, do the trend presentations at the Housewares show. And I mean, for going back to my days as a retailer and when you were working at Lifetime, always held you in the highest regard. And I think that you're somebody who sees the business and the landscape so clearly. So all of the compliments really mean so much to me coming from you. And we're working hard at it every day. It's not, it's not an easy retail environment out there. But as long as we continue to innovate and cultivate those relationships with consumers, we feel like we're going to outperform the lion's share of the people that we're competing against, and we're going to have a lot of fun doing it.
I agree. You guys make memories. That's what, when it's like, it's a brand that makes memories. And I think you can't beat that. You just can't beat it. Well, thank you, Evan, for spending so much time with me. And I look forward to speaking to you again in the future and seeing what you come up with next.
Thanks. Always great. Talk to you soon.
It's a pleasure. Thanks to all of you for joining Evan and I here on Design Driven. Wait to see what comes up on the next episode. And thank you for spending some time with us. Let us know what you think. Give us some feedback. Tell us who you'd like us to speak to and what other concerns you might have. Thanks again.